I knew that somehow I wanted to be able to incorporate all of these interests into one. The international health, the public health, the medicine, the infectious disease, and HIV all resonated with me. And so I knew that I had to figure out a way to be able to do that as a career. Sidwell was so formative in who I am. I distinctly remember the sense of community. When you're there and you're in the moment, those, Quaker meetings and sitting in silence, you don't really appreciate them as much as, now that I'm an adult. And when I think about the foundation that it gave me, there was just really no question that, I would want the same thing for my children. In high school, in the summers, I would volunteer and work as an intern at Harlem Hospital in New York City, where they were doing pediatric clinical trials on HIV and trying to figure out which drug regimens to use to treat kids. I continued with that work throughout my summers in college, seeing people actually living with the illness and unfortunately dying from it at such a young age inspired me to continue the work there. Suleiman Mboop discovered the second strain of HIV that circulates in West Africa. He's actually who mentored me when I worked in Senegal. So I spent a year doing research on the prevention of mother-to-child transmission. At the time, the HIV epidemic was really kind of still burgeoning. Working and doing the research in Senegal really gave me a different light on medicine. When I went back to med school, I knew I wanted to practice, but I also knew that I wanted to do more research and more public health work. In my fourth year of med school, I proposed to the dean that I would go to Johns Hopkins and get a master's in public health and international health. I spent my fourth year in Baltimore, finishing up medical school and getting my master's. It was a little bit crazy in retrospect. And then I went back to Philadelphia to Children's Hospital for my pediatric residency. The EIS program are really kind of the foot soldiers of public health. If there was an outbreak of an illness or disease, we were there to figure out what happened, who was exposed, to try to figure out how we could prevent further infections and transmission, and to try to educate the people involved and the public as to how to prevent something like this from happening again. I joined the faculty at GW in 2006. And I was essentially seconded to the DC Department of Health to help them with their HIV program. I am energized by the students. I have students working with me hand in hand, whether they're out in the field collecting data or helping me write papers or just being in class and learning about infectious diseases. All of those are opportunities to try to help form the next generation of public health experts. And watching them go off and launch their own careers, it makes me feel like I'm making a difference. The DC cohort, I always say, is my third child. It's a partnership that we have with NIH, as well as with the DC Department of Health and with all of the clinical sites in DC that are providing care for a wide variety of individuals living with HIV. And it's the first study of its kind to try to understand what an urban cohort of predominantly African Americans living with HIV look like. One of my goals is to make sure that we do everything that we can to show people how people living with HIV are disproportionately impacted so that they have the optimal outcomes that they deserve. So we don't just want to gather data, we actually want to use it for action and to improve their clinical care. I don't look for much, in terms of accolades, but the DC cohort is certainly a legacy that I have helped to create and that I hope will continue on for years. Ultimately, we will hopefully be able to use it as a platform to prevent HIV infection and hopefully to cure it. So that would be a huge legacy and a huge success professionally for me if we could see that day come.